looking back as a child, having to learn my deep breathing exercises, I expect at 11 years old it was just as hard for me as this is.
So from 11 years of age, you've...
Probably younger, but it was 11 when I was so sick. I had 6 months in bed with asthma, and it was at 11 that when I was allowed out of bed we had a glassed-in veranda, and I wasn't allowed to stand in the corridor or to get in the shade or to get in the draft. I could stand in the glassed-in part of the veranda and do my breathing exercises. And
that was deep breathing exercises?
Yes. And they always wondered why every time I got well enough to get out of bed and it looked as if I could be well enough to go to school next week, that I had another relapse. Well, that's what happened.
Amazing.
It was probably 3 years ago. We had a new doctor came from Russia. She'd been working with the United Nations and was in Sri Lanka for a while, but she came out to Port Sorell, and after I had so much trouble with her asthma, she said to me, now don't breathe so deeply. She didn't tell me anything about this technique, but she just showed me how to breathe in shallow. But she said breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Shallow, she said. And she said don't do deep breathing. But she'd obviously learned it in her training in Russia, and I think that has really done quite a lot to help, because every time I started on my deep breathing, or I realised what she had told me, I'd better try this shallow breathing. But as I get older, I went into a unit for the elderly up at Sheffield, but the weather there, even in the warm days, you get the cold wind off the mountain in the evening. By 3 o'clock in the morning, my asthma was blowing up again. So that wasn't the answer. So I started thinking about looking about moving again. And while this was going on, I saw the advert in the paper about the how do I pronounce it?
It's a hard name. It's hard. Buteyko.
Buteyko. So I thought I'd ring up and enrol, which is what I've done, and the results have been absolutely amazing. I'm not saying it's a cure-all of everything, but it's horribly close. I've been losing weight. I've not really had any asthma and not had to use any sprays for asthma angina, and the angina and blocked arteries will be getting worse and worse with the asthma, and I've found can cut out a lot, and I'm better off without it. And I'm going to the doctor on Tuesday to see how much more I can cut out, because I think it's reached a stage I can save myself a lot of money on the medication and pay for this course on breathing without being out of pocket, well before the year's out, so that anybody thinking the money is too much, my experience is that you sleep better, you feel better, you can get about better, you can walk about better, you can breathe better, and you don't get pains in your chest like you used to. If it does, the breathing exercise will help it to pass very quickly without medication. And all in all, it seems like something near a miracle.
Well, in the winter of 2002 I had a sleep test at the local hospital. I was told that my longest period of sleep was 59 seconds over the 6 hours. So I was strongly recommended to this sleep apnea machine, the CPAP machine. So I've had that machine for 4 years. The last few months I've had serious problems with it, waking up with a dry mouth, and the sinusitis quite severe, and a bad cough I've had for a long time. Kathy's been worried about. And anyway, I was prevailed upon to come to this course. I was very sceptical. I didn't believe it was going to help me. But I listened to Paul on Monday evening, and I said to Kathy, I'm going to try to sleep without the machine tonight, just breathe through my nose. And that means Sunday night was the last time I used that machine. And it was the second night that he introduced us to the tape. I taped my mouth for, I think it was on for 8 hours that night. And I woke up in the morning feeling better than I felt for I can't remember when. Kathy said I didn't snore and I didn't move around in the bed. I had a lot of problems before. And I've taped my mouth for the last few nights. We woke up at 3 o'clock the other morning. I did, and I felt it was time to get up. I was so rested. But because it was 3 o'clock, I made a cup of tea and had a slice of toast, I think, and went back to bed for a couple of hours, and I taped my mouth again and slept soundly till, what, 7? And I've never felt so rested from a night's sleep for as long as I can remember. The reason I breathed through my mouth was my nose was always blocked. It took Paul to reveal to me that my nose was blocked because I breathed through my mouth. So by keeping my mouth taped, my nose doesn't block and I breathe through my nose. That first night I woke up with no muscle pains in my legs. And up till then, I'd wake up every morning. I'd have really sore legs, painful legs. Well, since then I haven't had these pains. Already I feel I've more than got my money's worth from the course. Kathy says I don't cough near so much, and she's not so worried about me. I do a bit of welding, and she says I always cough when I'm grinding. But I've been grinding and welding the last week and hardly cough. Yeah, I don't feel near as tired by the end of the day. A reduction in appetite, I don't eat near as much. Don't feel the need to eat. Monday night was our first session. Here it is Friday, and I'd say I've had my money's worth already out of this. But even if I never improve, the fact I'm off that machine now, that's tremendous news for me. So it's a real plague. You can't go anywhere without it. And then I have a humidifier, and so that'll run out of water when you don't expect it to. So you get terrible sinusitis with this dry air blowing through your sinuses all night.
I live at just out of Devonport on a farm, about 10 minutes south of Devonport in Tasmania. It's the northwest coast of Tasmania, and it's really known well for its chest problems. We've had a couple of industries here, like a pulp mill and so forth, that have probably helped with that reputation. My mum says that I started getting asthma when I was about 5, coming in the cold night air in the evening. And my memory is of always having asthma, having to have a tablet under my tongue when I was a little girl, and I think that was probably a form of adrenaline. And then going on to puffers as they became available, but I went through the whole gamut of allergy tests, skin tests. I think, they worked out I was allergic to about 40 or 50 different things. My interest was horses, and I loved farms, so hay and horses were always difficult for me. Dust was always difficult in the stables, and now, of course, I live on a farm, and so I've got some times of the year that are particularly difficult for me. And I was just continually dependent on drugs all my life, and I hated that. I wanted to get off the drugs, always. I initially saw that program about the Russian doctor, Buteyko, on television, and just caught a little bit of it, and then didn't know how to follow up on that until I saw Buteyko advertised in the paper. And I guess the idea had been gelling that if that opportunity came up, I would grasp it and try to, do something about it for myself. And I think that it was the right time for me. I really was prepared to put the money and the time and the effort into it at that stage. I was in my 50s, and I'd had 50 years of being dependent on drugs and doctor's visits and pneumonias and chest problems, and I didn't want to live my life like that. Well, then I saw the advertisement in the paper for the course, and my husband was very supportive, and I went in and quite sceptically, I have to say. I think I asked Paul, could he guarantee the results? And but I decided, because it cost me money, I would put everything I could into it. And I was very committed, and I started to see results from the first night. And I think it was within 3 days of starting the course that I reduced my medication to a much less drug, from Seretide down to Flixitide, and stopped taking Ventolin completely, and subsequently came off that too. So almost immediate results, and I was very thrilled and very excited about that. I think that's about 3 years ago. And I have had a couple of relapses where conditions have been quite difficult, or stressful times where I've picked up a chest infection. I've had to go back onto the drugs for a short period of time. I have a very supportive GP who's quite prepared to help me with that. And so if I do have a chest infection and I do have to take some drugs, I don't get too worried about that now, because I think compared to what I was having, that's nothing, and I know I can come off the drugs again and have months and months without touching them, and that's a tremendous thing to be able to do. I'm a trained nurse. I was actually a palliative care specialist nurse, and so I can understand some of the science behind Buteyko, and it makes a lot of sense to me. I'm afraid that the nursing and the medical profession are quite limited in what they have to offer in some respects. We reach for the prescription pad, and I think that's changing as we're getting much more interested in natural therapies and the work of naturopaths. So I think there's already a movement, to a much broader way of thinking. And but the medical profession, and I include nursing in that, is restricted in its thinking and dependent on drugs. And because the drugs do work, or appear to work, or mask the symptoms, and because we only generally reach for them in an emergency when things are really bad, and we get such relief from them, of course, it's the easy way to go. But Buteyko takes a bit of personal effort and discipline. And that's why I really think it should be taught to children in the schools, when they're so receptive and so easy to teach, and they get tremendous results, and not just put onto puffers. I have a teacher friend in a primary school here who has 23 children in her class, and as many as 15 aerosols in her drawer in plastic bags with the children's names on, that she gives out before sport or at certain times or if it's swimming, or it horrifies me that doing something as simple as sitting them down and saying, now let's all breathe properly for 2 minutes in the morning and practice our breathing.
My grandparents would say to me, keep your mouth closed, don't talk, don't.
Yes, they did.
Well, we're the generation that sort of allows this to happen, haven't we?
And it's so basic, if you can reduce the irritants that are going into your lung by a certain percentage, and you can warm and filter that air, and have all the added benefits of having your nose clear and the other benefits for that Buteyko can offer by relaxing smooth muscle in blood vessels, and there's so many spin-offs.
So what actually happened to you, physically, coming off the drug regime that you're on? I mean, how did that affect your life?
Oh, I felt safe, I think, was the first thing. You see, if you go away camping or you go to visit someone, you have to take your puffers with you and your drugs. You can't do anything in life without this backup of these drugs that you're so dependent on. And I used to think that if the world ended, I'd be one of the first to die, or if there was a tsunami or something, because if the factory that made the Ventolin went, I'd be a goner. But now I feel, okay, if I can't have the drugs, I know that I can work with it and do without them. It won't be as quick or as easy as with the drugs, but I can do it. And even if I go back onto the drugs for a little while, if I've got an infection or something, then I know I can come off them again. It's just a matter of practicing, the breathing method that I've been taught. There are a lot of people that have been most impressed with my experience, and I've shared that willingly and freely, and I hope in the future that this technique will be taught much more openly. And you see, it's not a drug, it's got no side effects, it can't hurt anybody, it can only help, and it helps athletes, I believe, are using it now. Oh, why would we not teach it in the schools?